Right, listen, mate. You're under arrest for GBH, OK? All right.
Now, at some point during this incident, the complainant suffered a very nasty injury to his ear. Do you remember how that came to happen?
His head is here. I sort of went over and bit his ear. To get him off of me, that's what I resorted to.
Filmed over the course of 4 years, on the front line of justice, we go inside the complex world of criminal barristers.
The firearm being discharged.
Victim, he runs off to the right.
Off the CCTV.
Right hand on waist.
It could be us, because it would be off camera.
But these barristers aren't looking for who's guilty. Their mission is to defend.
There has to be some system where people's rights are protected.
We all should empathise with people who are victims of crime, but that doesn't mean that people who are accused of crimes shouldn't have a fair trial.
Don't shoot, just don't shoot.
There has to be a balance, and we fight fearlessly for our clients.
It's just a robe and it's just a wig, but it's almost as though it provides some form of protection. You walk into court and you feel, OK, I'm ready for battle now.
The only conclusion that you will be able to reach in this case is one of not guilty.
Thousands of criminal cases and a justice system pushed to its limits.
Whatever they've been accused of, I might be the only person that's actually on their side. And maybe it's the ultimate underdog fight.
We all have one thing in common. We all want to pursue and be a part of the pursuit of justice.
In the early hours of October 18th, 2020, police responded to an emergency call about a man being violently attacked at a residential property in South London.
Control for 35. Adult male, 27 years.
When they arrived at the scene, they discovered that part of the victim's ear had been bitten off.
A large chunk of his ear is missing.
And he was taken to hospital for emergency treatment. Hours later, police raided the home of the alleged perpetrator.
Hello, buddy. Yeah. Put your hand out for us. Jump up.
The victim's cousin, 21-year-old Julio Rivas.
Right, listen, mate. You're under arrest for GBH, OK? It was on the grounds that obviously an altercation happened last night with a friend, and during that altercation you've bitten his ear off, OK? All right.
We need to go to the police station, obviously. We're going to go to Croydon, all right?
Julio, who lives at home with his family and who has never been in trouble with the law before, has been charged with intentionally causing grievous bodily harm during a drunken fight at a party. His trial is 2 weeks away, and if found guilty, he could face a lengthy prison sentence.
It wasn't like I went out and attacked an innocent person. It was actually a fight that broke out between two people. It's not within me to be a violent person. It was like a massive shock that it happened and that I took it that far. It was like on certain times, and it does weigh on my mind. It feels like your life is out of your hands completely. You're almost like a pebble in a sea. You're just getting thrown here, there, wherever.
Barristers are the front line and present the case to the judge and jury. Julio is being represented by Tom Flavin, and today he's meeting him to hear his account of events, to determine if he has a defence.
But why don't you tell me, sort of in your own words, what happened that evening?
The incident took place during a house party that Julio had organised with his cousin, but which soon got out of hand.
I was in charge of the invites and getting all the girls to come around, and he was putting up the house.
Right. And how did things escalate?
As soon as the girls arrived, everyone started drinking. One of the girls was causing a bit of a racket. He then was trying to sort of tell me off for telling the girl to sort of behave a bit more. He then was trying to kick me out in front of all my friends. So yeah, that just angered me.
Was there a physical fight between you and the complainant?
I don't recall who put their hands on who first. I just remember we were both just grabbing each other.
Okay. Now, at some point during this incident, the complainant suffered a very nasty injury to his ear. He had to have some plastic surgery to sort of recreate a bit of the ear which was missing. Do you remember how that came to happen?
He was like on top of me, like trying to choke me. It's kind of like a headlock sort of situation, and his head is here. I sort of went over and bit his ear. To get him off of me, that's what I resorted to.
In terms of whether we caused really serious harm, my advice to you here on the evidence is plainly you have. And I think the sentence we would be looking at would be in the region of 6 years.
It's a scary thought. It's such a substantial time in my eyes that I want to avoid that at all costs.
Temple in central London is one of the UK's leading legal districts where some of the country's top defence barristers are based.
As the complainant was running away, he tried to shoot again.
From murder to kidnap to serious fraud, they represent a huge range of clients whose freedom is at stake.
You can't stereotype somebody who is charged with a criminal offence because they come in all shapes and sizes and their whole lives are on the line. They're frozen until such time as criminal proceedings are over.
Let's let them decide, and then we can decide how we react to it. Whether it be a law-abiding citizen who gets into a fight, or a very young person who has been immersed in knife crime or drug culture, it doesn't matter. We have one thing in common, and that is a pursuit of excellence and dedication and commitment to defending.
One of the most serious and increasingly common crimes that defence barristers deal with is called county lines. City gangs transport drugs to smaller towns and rural areas across the UK. They often use a dedicated mobile phone line to make their deals. By dealing across police boundaries, the gangs are hard to catch. But during 2019, police in London made a major breakthrough. They retrieved a phone used to make drug deals by one gang operating between the capital and Northampton, 65 miles away. Using its messages and geolocation data, 6 people were arrested and charged with conspiracy to supply £1 million worth of Class A drugs. And their trial begins in 3 weeks. Barrister Sharon Russell, assisted by solicitor Antonia Charles, is representing one of the defendants. He's facing up to 10 years in prison, and today she's meeting him to discuss his case.
Hi, did you get lost?
No.
You didn't? Okay, good.
Hey, good to see you.
Know your Barrister Cheryl? We're just going to go over a few things.
Yeah.
Okay?
Age 23, he's a Londoner who studied at Northampton University and now runs his own fashion business. Although he knows his co-defendants, he claims he had nothing to do with any drug deals.
The client, he's a young man, graduated from university, a second-class upper degree. He'd started up his own fashion line and was really working on that. All things that pointed against someone saying, you know what, I'm going to get myself involved in Class A drugs.
The prosecution say he acted as a driver for the gang because tracking data from mobile phone masts known as cell signs linked the gang's phone to his car during the journeys he made to Northampton.
Yeah.
He admits giving one of them lifts, but says he was only travelling there to visit university friends and sell clothes for his business.
So what is this case saying to you? When you're looking at this case, what do you think?
We have a copy of the instructions that you say is your account of this matter, right?
Yeah.
Upon those instructions, we've advised that you're not guilty. You say you don't know about this phone, you don't know about this line.
So I just got guilty?
Are you joking? Why would you even... What?
A conspiracy is you don't need to be involved, you just need to have knowledge.
No, that's not right. That you agree that that offence should be going on. That you are party to it. Were you?
No.
So you've answered your own question. Although you are in a car with someone who may have this drug phone in their possession, you don't know that they have that phone. Do you know whether I have another phone on me right now, or whether this is my only phone, or whether if I take calls on this phone, what I'm doing in those calls? Do you see what I mean?
So I don't know what she's got in her pocket.
Precisely, you don't know what I've got.
Yeah.
And even if I do take a phone call and say, yeah, I'll drop it off in 20 minutes, yeah, cool, see you in a bit. Do you know what that's about?
No.
Do you have any other questions or concerns?
No, I just need to be free now, man.
When you think about that, shall I just accept what they're saying about me? I could tell that that statement was just the pressure getting to him and him wanting it just to be over. I mean, that's heavy with fear, insecurity, all the rest of it. Yes, there are occasions when you are making the London-Northampton route travel, but that was being done anyway for the reasons that you give. You're selling your clothing line up there. You're seeing somebody up there. We're a long way off, a long, long way off from any kind of guilty verdict in this case, okay? No, you shouldn't be pleading guilty if you were not party to this criminal agreement.
Yeah.
And do you stand by that?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
As they prepare to defend their clients, criminal barristers analyze thousands of pages of prosecution case papers and witness statements, as well as producing their own evidence to try and counter the claims they face.
I read the papers, I read the witness statements, because the whole point of the job is that you're supposed to be able to look at everything and consider everything in view of what's in front of you.
There might be aspects of telephone material that we need to explore and examine. The same in terms of pathology, the same in terms of forensic DNA evidence. But the ultimate objective is to make sure that when we go into trial, nothing is left to chance. I anticipate every possible scenario, every possible outcome.
For her latest case, Barrister Sharon Wasu needs to contest the claim that her client, a 23-year-old university graduate, conspired to supply £1 million worth of Class A drugs alongside 5 members of a County Lines gang.
That's it going up, but that's staying. Okay, that's going up.
If found guilty, her client faces up to 10 years in prison. But he claims he wasn't knowingly involved in the deals that took place.
I understand why things are charged as conspiracies if you have a number of people all involved in an enterprise. But I think the danger with conspiracies when you lump everyone in is that it's easy and dangerous for people to get caught up who are not party to the agreement.
The prosecution argue Cheryl's client transported one of the dealers to sell drugs in Northampton because cell site data links a mobile phone used by the gang to his car during several trips he made there from London. In order to understand the distances and times of these journeys, Cheryl and solicitor Antonia Charles are retracing his trips. Their client accepts being friends with his co-defendants and giving lifts to one of them.
It was really another guy from his area. You know, I think they lived within yards of each other, that he'd been driving around on these specific dates. I was taking somebody I knew up and down, I didn't mind. Got my new car, uni's out, it's summer.
The prosecution has yet to provide any direct proof their client discussed or handled any drugs.
No drugs are ever found on him, no money's ever found on him, nothing like that.
There's no communication like saying, well, going up there to get drugs. There's no text, come and pick me up because we're not going There's nothing
None of that
connects them that he knew what that person was doing.
But the jury can rely on circumstantial evidence. Even without direct proof, they can reach a guilty verdict based on what the evidence implies. And Cheryl's worried that the number of his journeys that coincide with the gang's movement could suggest he was more involved than he claims.
It's just quite peculiar because there are two kind of clumps where he's gone up and down and up and down. So it starts off in August, and then there's a 2 trip in September, and there's trips in January, and then an early February. I'm just wondering if a 2-hour journey, is that too much for somebody to ask you just to do for nothing? Is that unusual? Is that suspicious? Is that unlikely? It's all circumstantial, but as we know, that circumstantial can add up to a compelling narrative.
It's not suspicious. They're going out on a little drive. You're chilling with your mate.
But that's what I'm saying. Is it a little drive? It's having the jury understand that that is something that he would do just as a young man. Will they get that?
On a cold April night in Chinkford, East London, 17-year-old talented music production student Chima Nsuji was ambushed, chased and stabbed to death outside a local primary school just a few streets from his home.
The whole family is distraught. We can't believe it. We think this is a dream. You know, why Chima? Why? You know, what did he do to deserve this? Why? I just can't believe it, you know.
The motive is unclear, but a few days later, 2 young teenagers were arrested and charged with his murder after having been allegedly caught on CCTV and identified by a witness.
Okay, so this is the school, isn't it?
Yeah, this is the first part.
So let's just find this camera angle.
King's counsel Laurie Ann Power and her junior barrister are representing one of the young defendants. He's 15 years old and has been diagnosed with autism and learning difficulties. If found guilty of this shocking murder, he's facing a life sentence.
Yeah. Can you see this here?
Yes.
That is there, all right?
Okay.
Okay, so 1 out. 2 of them out of the car, but it's not very, you can't clearly see any facial features there.
No.
So we're going to try and follow their route, yeah?
Okay.
So that's where he stopped up there, so let's walk up. And what they seem to be doing is looking like this. But there was another van there at that point, right?
There was.
So what can they see? Aha, who's that there? That's them, isn't it? Then the running starts. Yeah. Okay. So it's an ambush.
Yeah.
You have on CCTV 2 people looking as though they're waiting for someone to arrive, and then when that person does arrive, they're chased, they're attacked, they're stabbed, and then they kill. It's difficult to make an identification from the CCTV footage, but an eyewitness claims to have seen our client get out of the taxi and then give chase. Yeah, it's this house. So where's the camera for here? There. Yeah. Okay. That camera catches them running past here. This is the gate. This is the grass. Okay, we are exactly in that spot right now. Okay, that's the stab. This is where he stabbed right here. We see at least one swing that looks like it could have hit, and it's in the right location, under the armpit, swinging around, hits, penetrates the chest wall. There we go, that definitely hits. And that's a long machete.
Yeah.
That's a very long machete, so that... Okay. The person who died is someone's child. The reality is that knife crime, where someone dies, devastates lives of all of the people involved. You know, a site visit is, I think, probably one of the most crucial parts of being a defence lawyer, particularly when you're dealing with cases of murder. And when you have a real-life perspective of the crime scene, you are better placed to challenge the witnesses on what they purport to have seen. The witness can't have seen what he says he saw. We know from this footage that the deceased and the witness is only captured coming towards the taxi after they've got out, and they're hiding behind the vans. So he couldn't have seen them get out of the taxi with the machete.
Yeah.
In fact, the witness could not have seen them until they were already on top of them.
Yeah.
With the witnesses' evidence called into question, can they prove that their client wasn't one of the ambushers caught on CCTV? In just a few days' time, 21-year-old Julio Rivas is due to face trial. He's charged with causing grievous bodily harm with intent after biting part of his cousin's ear off during a drunken fight at a house party. If found guilty, he could be sentenced to 6 years in prison.
For me, it's making sure that the judge and the courts have an opportunity to hear my side of the story. And if they feel like I made a mistake, then I'm completely happy to own up to it and take sort of whatever I deserve if that's the case.
But there's been a significant development in Julio's case. Having heard his defense, the prosecution has agreed to pursue a less serious charge of causing grievous bodily harm without intent, but only on the condition that he pleads guilty. It would mean him accepting a criminal conviction, but his sentence would be less severe, and there's a chance he wouldn't have to serve any time behind bars.
I think the sentence we would be looking at would be in the region of 18 months imprisonment. But if we were to plead guilty, any sentence of 2 years or less is capable of being suspended. There is a possibility that you don't go to prison at all. And if I'm going to persuade the judge not to give us an immediate prison sentence, the court will need a probation report on you. And that's working with you on anger management, on your alcohol intake, on other areas to try and reduce any risk of reoffending. Would you be willing to work with the probation?
Yeah. I'd be happy to go with what the court recommends.
Well, listen, I'm going to do everything in my power to try and stop you going to prison. The stakes for Julio are huge. Whether the judge will be persuaded to suspend the sentence or not, that's really kind of where we're at. It's crunch time now. Yes, his actions were deplorable, but this is a defining moment in his life. And that's what I'm going to try and say to the judge. It's really important for Julio to come hopefully full of remorse for his actions, and that makes my job a lot easier when I'm making those submissions on his behalf.
But on the morning of the hearing, as proceedings are about to commence, Julio hasn't arrived at court.
I was supposed to meet him for a conference maybe an hour or so ago, and he's been held up, he's been delayed because of traffic. It's so frustrating that he's late because I want to say to the judge, give this guy a chance. He's doing everything that he can, and it never looks great presentationally if you're having to ask the judge for time because the client's not here. And it's a real risk he's going to go to prison. Like this is a toss of a coin time. So hopefully Mr. Rivas will turn up soon, but I'm going to have to just tell the judge what's happening because part of my job now is to try and pacify the situation, to buy him enough time to get him here.
Barrister Sheldon Worcester's latest courtroom challenge is getting underway. The trial of her 23-year-old county lines defendant, who's accused of conspiring with 5 others to supply Class A drugs.
Yeah, that first day, everything comes together, your prep, your instructions. It's not a game, but it's game time.
Due to last 2 weeks, the case is being heard at Crown Court in Northampton. As with all Crown Court cases, the 12-person jury who'll decide her client's fate will be selected from the surrounding areas, and Cheryl knows that overcoming local preconceptions could be crucial.
I think biases do play an active role in people's minds, and juries are made up of people. My client's defence is he wasn't part of this conspiracy, but sometimes it's difficult to believe and see the individual in a case. London culture, isn't it? Just, you know, groups of people hanging out together, young men and drug dealing. You know, maybe because they all look the same or sound the same or from the same area or whatever, that they must all be up to the same thing. But they are individuals.
I'm heading out to Northampton. If you're lighting here, mind the gap between the train and the platform edge.
We have to break this broad brush narrative, really dissect and look at, does it tell that story? Or is that just an assumption that the prosecution are making?
Hey, my train's just got in.
The real test is, can they make a jury sure?
Key to the prosecution's case is cell site phone data that links Cheryl's client to the movements of the drug gang's phone. But Cheryl now believes there's additional phone data which undermines the prosecution's argument. It suggests that as soon as her client and the gang member arrived in Northampton, they split up and went to different locations, supporting his claim that he was just giving them a lift and wasn't involved with any drug dealing that took place there.
So we've literally just walked out of court, and how long will you be there?
But as proceedings begin, she's hit a major problem.
I was just kind of shortcut straight to some issues, which I really need answers on because evidence is starting possibly tomorrow.
In all criminal cases, key arguments are often supported by the views of qualified experts. And Cheryl had instructed a cell site analyst to provide a detailed account of her clients and the drug gang's movements in Northampton. But the expert hasn't provided the correct information, and without it, there's no hard evidence for her to submit.
We have a schedule with a number of GPRS hits for his number. His phone moves up from London through to Milton Keynes and then to Northampton. The advice that I sent through had a whole leap of other numbers that really needs looking at, and it's like an emergency. That I need this answer. And I don't think we can really take this matter further until you have that. Bye. Like, this is literally not on. This can create such a big issue right now. We'd instructed a phone expert, but our expert hadn't covered particular dates when they were within Northampton. There are ups and downs in all trials, and, you know, some days can be tough. It's frustrating. The thing is, you just got to crack on.
70 miles away in South London, there's better news for barrister Tom Flavin and his ear-biting case. His client, Julio, has finally arrived at court. He'll be pleading guilty to grievous bodily harm, and Tom needs to convince the judge his sentence should be suspended and served on probation in a community instead of prison. After just 1 hour, the hearing is over. Following Tom's pleas that his client's actions were shocking but out of character and unlikely to ever be repeated, the judge decides not to send Julio to prison.
You've got a couple of orders. Stay away from alcohol for 3 months. They're going to put a tag on your leg to make sure that they can monitor the alcohol in your system. The other thing we need to do is make sure that you go and work with probation. You'll be speaking to them once or twice a week. They'll check in with you to make sure that your progress is going well. Your whole future is ahead of you.
When the verdict came in, it was massive relief knowing that I'd be able to move on with my life and be able to live my life on the outside, not lose my job, still have an income, not put that sort of pressure on my family as well. So I was really happy, yeah, really excited and hopeful for the future for me as well. I just have to try and move on with my life and make the most of it.
Laurianne's client is accused of taking part in the killing of another teenager in East London. She needs to convince a jury that he was not present at the scene and therefore could not have taken part in the murder. She and her junior barrister are meeting the client's solicitor, Rachel Archer, to discuss their strategy for the trial, which starts in just 3 days.
We've been to the scene of the stabbing, and I think we've kind of worked out that there are a number of things that the main eyewitness purports to have seen that I think probably he couldn't have seen.
Right.
We are really challenging the witness on one point only, that they are mistaken in their identification of our client. And so that brings us straight into, doesn't it, where were we and what were we doing at the time? Our client is such a lovely young boy, and he has quite clearly been the victim of what seems to be quite a heavyweight drug network and been forced into some form of exploitation.
And for some time before this, he'd been reporting missing to the police, to social services. It's an avoidable scenario.
And so this is specifically in relation to where he says he was on the day of the killing and at the time of the killing. Marilyn, that's,
So, speaking to him, he's made it clear that he wasn't at the scene, and in fact he was taken to a location outside of London because he's being exploited by adults to sell drugs.
We have no alibi witnesses. I think his parents can give evidence about the ongoing struggle. What they can't do is they can't say, at this time, on this date, I am aware that he was taken by X person and placed in this position. But ultimately the reality is that he's told us that he's innocent, and
he's maintained his not guilty plea from the outside.
He's maintained it. So that's what we have to work towards. Okay, and so we'll see our boy on Monday.
Right.
Although it's no defence in the eyes of the law, exploitation by drug gangs is an increasingly common part of criminal cases, and for the parents, it can be utterly devastating. Despite his father's continuous support, 3 months before the murder, the defendant vanished from his home into the clutches of the gang.
So the first thing that broke my heart, my son started smoking. And I started saying to him, stop taking cannabis off people because they're going to want something in return. I would see him, he's in expensive jackets and trainers. Oh, don't worry, Dad, my friends brought this for me. They're looking after me, they're the oldest. And as a father, you become vulnerable when people are grooming your child. It's one of the most painful things you can imagine. You're having sleepless nights, you can't eat. The mum's ringing, the mum's in bits. Weeks on end, you're not seeing your son, and all the police are saying to you is, report him missing, report him missing. So where has the failures come? A father cries out to you for help in January before his son's arrested for anything. He's going missing. Pleads to you, pleads to the police at 1 a.m. in the morning. As a parent, what are you meant to do?
Cheryl's drug conspiracy trial is 1 week in, and she's now gathered and submitted the cell site phone data, which her phone expert hadn't provided.
I realised I can do this myself. We all know what this case centres on. It's the cell site, it's the journeys, it's the phone, and just see who's moving where. I don't want to be caught out. I don't want my clients to be caught out.
The data will help Cheryl argue her client and a member of the drugs gang went to different locations after arriving in Northampton. Supporting his claim, he wasn't part of any drugs deals that took place there. But bigger challenges lie ahead. In the coming days, her client's expected to give evidence, and as well as defending himself, he needs to be willing to point the finger of blame at his co-defendants. If not, the jury could infer he was protecting them and conclude he was involved.
Let me look at the indictment. We'll look at the indictment.
But in a recent conversation with his solicitor, Antonia, he suggested it's something he might not be willing to do. And Cheryl wants to remind him of what's at stake.
I'm confident that if, as I know you will, you articulate yourself well, we have a strong case and we're in a strong position. But the tensions surrounding you just not wanting to be seen as though you're throwing people under the bus, you have to trust our judgment on things that may need saying and lines of questioning that may need advancing at trial. You have to remember that it's your neck on the line.
Yeah.
This is your trial. If you are found guilty of this, you take the penalty, nobody else, right?
Yeah, I know.
We're looking at a big penalty.
Yeah.
What needs to be done needs to be done. Everybody's friends. Oh, that's my friend. Friendship always ends at the court door. Trust me on that.
Yeah.
Lorianne's murder trial is 2 weeks in and hinges on whether she can persuade the jury that it's not her client seen in the CCTV footage of the crime. However, just as she's preparing to cross-examine, her teenage client changes his story and admits he was there.
So we've had a pretty dramatic change of event. Yesterday, we were due to cross-examine the main witness in the case. The jury were about to walk into court. I turned to look at my client, and I just got the feeling, the instinct that something wasn't quite right with him. Anyway, to cut a long story short, there was a significant change in instructions, and we went from a position of running alibi as our defence to advancing, yes, I was there, but I didn't take part in the attack. I didn't know that an attack was going to take place. And that changed pretty instantly. So essentially, from leaving court last night till going in today, I probably haven't slept. Just rethinking strategy and how we deal with that and the approach to take in front of the jury. You know, it's a common misconception that people tend to think that as the barristers get to choose what defence our clients advance. We don't. We are bound by our instructions. The service that you provide, the way that you approach the trial, and your fearlessness in court remains the same throughout. You just have to adapt. So the upshot is that at 15 years old, if he's convicted of murder, he's likely to spend as long as or longer in prison than he has actually been alive.
With no clear motive for the attack and a sudden change in defence to consider, the jury spends 2 days in deliberation. On the one hand, a young man with learning difficulties faces a life sentence. On the other, a 17-year-old lies dead, his family inconsolable.
At that moment in court, before the foreperson says guilty or not guilty, you can feel the tension in court. Everyone, myself included, you are sitting there and you are just waiting for those words to come out. It's a highly stressful, highly tense environment.
After considering all the evidence, the jury returns a unanimous verdict of guilty, and the defendant is sentenced to 18 years.
They found him guilty. For me, I was prepared, but I thought it was wrong. A part of me was glad it was over. I've suffered for 8 months of people making accusations against my child. And I was just relieved for him as well, because it's like a nightmare's coming to an end. Not just for us, but also the victim's family that has to come to court every day and watch the CCTV knowing how their son lost his life. What pain that family is going through for the rest of their lives.
You know, I'm not shocked or horrified, you know. I understand the verdict, but nonetheless, it's still a verdict that none of us wanted. Whenever I see a young defendant sentenced to life imprisonment, everyone's lost something, and it's everyone's worst nightmare. It's a reality, unfortunately, of inner city life, and those people who are left to deal with the aftermath are the parents and the families of the deceased and of the respective defendants. We have all who work within the justice system sat and seen and witnessed time and time again the utter devastation that is caused to families. I have a son and I have a daughter, and so yes, as a human, of course, sometimes you do take it home with you. It's soul-destroying.
At Northampton's Crown Court, Cheryl's drug conspiracy client is finished being cross-examined by the prosecution.
How was it?
He fought his corner.
Oh, good.
I think, you know, all in all, I think he was good. I think he said everything that he would have wanted to say.
Good.
Yeah. All right.
All right, thank you.
Bye.
Tomorrow, the jury will retire to decide her client's fate. But beforehand, Cheryl and the prosecution have one last chance to argue their case in their closing speeches.
This evening, it's just pulling my speech together, just making sure that it's all down. I have to be comfortable. I've made every point that I want to make. I'm making them in the best way possible. And I've said everything I want to say. But yeah, that's it. Speech night.
If her client is to be found not guilty and avoid up to 10 years in prison, she needs to convince the jury that phone data placing a member of the gang with him in his car during trips to Northampton doesn't prove his involvement in the crime, however suspicious it may look.
In our criminal justice system, what we do not peddle in is suspicion. We do not peddle in jumping to conclusions. Crown say, in giving those lifts, this defendant must have been a party to what that young man was doing. And if that is not asking you to find someone guilty by their mere association, I don't know what is. When you push aside suspicion, you can conclude that you are not sure of his guilt. And so the appropriate verdicts in this case are ones of not guilty.
2 weeks of courtroom arguments are over. The 12 members of the jury are sent out to reach their verdict.
There is nothing that focuses the mind like when the jury is out. 12 strangers who now have to make a decision on all the evidence that they've heard. It's like waiting to hear your fate. Is it going to be good or is it going to be bad? Because a really big decision is about to be made.
After 3 days of deliberation, the jury make up their minds. Cheryl's client is found guilty or conspiracy to supply Class A drugs and sent to prison for 4 years and 8 months.
Hi, Antonia.
Cheryl. Bloody hell, man.
I could
you hear me?
cry. Yeah, I could cry, mate. I could cry. I'm not even joking. I like to win, but where it doesn't happen and somebody has been convicted, it's frustrating. It's frustrating. Not to play down the jury system, it's right that we should be tried by our peers. But, Antonia, I feel sick, you know.
Oh, that's annoying, man.
I know.
So flipping annoying.
I know. And it's sad as well when you represent young people and they lose their liberty for a long period of time. It's heart-wrenching. I can't lie to you. This one is not that great. It's not that great, Antonia. But you've got to just take time and think and recalibrate and not be scared to defend. You know, there has to be people vocalising and advocating, or else, who is it going to be?
That is our client there. Yep. So that is the bag containing the drugs.
The police descend on him.
It's such a large amount of drugs. Street value, it could be about £1 million worth. What on earth is this man doing?
It is your life that is on the line. It's your liberty, it's your freedom.
You could be facing a life-changing custodial sentence.
Inside the world of barristers, at the front line of justice.
Put your hand out for us.
Mate, you're under arrest for GBH.
Victim runs off to the right.
Off the CCTV.
Right hand on waist.
It could be us. Because it would be off camera.
But these barristers aren't looking for who's guilty. Their mission is to defend.
There has to be some system where people's rights are protected.
We all should empathise with people who are victims of crime, but that doesn't mean that people who are accused of crimes shouldn't have a fair trial.
Don't shoot, just don't shoot.
There has to be a balance, and we fight fearlessly for our clients.
It's just a robe and it's just a wig, but it's almost as though it provides some form of protection. You walk into court and you feel, okay, I'm ready for battle now.
The only conclusion that you will be able to reach in this case is one of not guilty.
Thousands of criminal cases, a justice system at breaking point, and some barristers on the edge.
Right now we are engulfed in a crisis of epic proportions.
Whatever they've been accused of, I might be the only person that's actually on their side. And maybe it's the ultimate underdog fight.
We all have one thing in common. We all want to pursue and be a part of the pursuit of justice.
On February 23, 2020, in North London, the driver of a white Mercedes reported being the victim of a violent carjacking. Robbed at knife point, and his car stolen after he stopped at traffic lights. An extremely rare crime in the UK. Police soon arrested 2 men who were found driving his vehicle. On them, they found a knife, a screwdriver, and the owner's driving licence. Defence barrister Leon Nathan Lynch is representing one of the defendants.
To speak on people's behalf in the criminal justice system, I don't hold that lightly at all. It's a privilege. I'm naturally a defender, and there's always 2 sides to every argument.
His client is accused of robbery, possession of an offensive weapon, and going equipped for theft. A father of 2, this isn't the first time he's been in trouble with the law.
I was brought up in a church, and I went private school. And I ended up going the wrong way, and that's been committing crime, to be honest. My first daughter, I spent most of her life in prison. She didn't have a male figure in her life at all. Like, she's 17 now, and like, I don't really know her. I'm very, very worried about it because my second daughter, she's like literally a month old. If this goes wrong, then I lose time with my child.
With his trial 1 week away, Leon's meeting him at court to discuss the version of events he's provided, known as the defendant's instructions.
What would be your thoughts?
A bit stressed, worried, and nervous.
Leon's client claims it wasn't a carjacking. Rather, the driver paid him and his co-defendant to fake the robbery so he could claim the insurance money. Like all defense barristers, it's not up to Leon to determine guilt or innocence. That's for the jury to decide. His job is to serve the justice system by providing his client with the best possible defense.
You say in your instructions that this is not a robbery, this is an agreement to remove his car for insurance purposes.
Yeah.
And what were you going to get out of all of this?
£500.
So we're here in Wood Green Crown Court.
For £500, I know. I was going through a bad time in my life.
I hear that. We need to make sure that for this daughter, you're around. Because the reality is, you know, if you're convicted.
Substantial amount of time.
Substantial. We're looking at years in prison. There's a number of previous convictions here which a jury will hear, which they're going to obviously form a view about your character. But remember, you don't have to prove your innocence. It's for the prosecution to prove your guilt.
Temple in central London is one of the UK's leading legal districts, home to offices known as chambers. This is where some of the country's top defence barristers are based.
All right, lovely. And just keep trying her, obviously, just keep trying her, because I know there's a chance she won't be. I know she's been...
What the applicant told the police was exactly what he went on to tell them after his arrest.
From murder to drug smuggling to armed robbery.
I separated the applications to exclude the videos from the knife.
I see.
Their job is to give clients specialist legal advice, sometimes preparing their cases over weeks or even months, before fighting for them in front of a judge and jury.
I'm the person who stands there in the wig and the gown, presenting the defence case on behalf of my client in the courtroom. That is what I do day in and day out. So that is the role of the barrister.
What was your intention? Why did you do this? I know that not all my clients are going to be acquitted, but I want to be sure that if they are convicted, it's because they should have been.
If he didn't have a knife, then he's taken the wallet with force without a knife. And if he did have a knife, he didn't use it.
Yeah.
We want to make sure that innocent people aren't convicted of crimes that they haven't committed. That is the thing that upholds our system of justice. Because the moment we start convicting innocent people, well, then everything falls apart.
You came upstairs this morning very early while I was doing work this morning. You came upstairs this morning.
No.
You've been upstairs as well very early in the morning, but what did you do this morning? On the
Although they work as part of a chambers, most barristers are self-employed.
Okay, we're going to have to do some work. So what I just really want to focus in on is the file. That's what I want to know. That's what I want to know, and how much material there is in relation to the file. That's what...
For Matt Radstone and his fellow defenders, that normally means relying on solicitors for work. The solicitor meets the client first and assesses their case.
Solicitors are there from the very, very start, from the moment a defendant is arrested.
Correct, I agree, absolutely.
They take their instructions and they present the case to me, the barrister. And so the role that the solicitor plays is totally and utterly indispensable.
Hi, Catherine, how you doing?
I have a new case.
Yeah.
It relates to connections to the drugs conspiracy.
Yeah.
He's a taxi driver
Right.
and has been found with 10 kilos of cocaine in his boot.
10 kilos of cocaine in his boot.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's all obviously come as a very big shock to
Yeah.
the family.
I'll have a look at the material and perhaps we'll have a chat tomorrow and work out where we're going to go.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, so much.
The defendant, a taxi driver who runs a private hire firm, was arrested by undercover police after 2 suspected drug smugglers used him to courier a parcel containing cocaine worth £1 million. He and the men have been charged with conspiracy to supply Class A drugs, an illegal trade that's radically increased in the last decade and for which the penalties are severe.
The prosecution was saying that this was a sophisticated, high-level conspiracy to supply significant quantities of cocaine that had come into the country from abroad.
Let me get the CCTV.
And that my client was involved in the distribution of that cocaine down through the food chain.
And here he is here.
Somebody that was charged with an offence of this level, of this seriousness, would be facing a sentence of, at the very least, 10 years in prison, if not more.
The taxi driver accepts he took a courier job to deliver a parcel for the 2 men. However, he says he'd never met them before and was told the parcel contained money.
Initial thoughts are, what on earth is this man doing, allowing 10 kilos of cocaine to be placed into the back of his car?
Well, he says that on the initial phone call, I was asked to deliver a parcel from Chessington to Blackheath. I was told it was cash and, you know, no further questions were asked. I was thinking, well, is that normal?
So that's the bag of drugs. Ends up being put into the client's vehicle. And these 2 guys are said to be acting together. So these are co-defendants. Right. So see them go around the corner and then... So hang on, so there is seems to be a break in the footage.
There's clearly a gap because he then appears in his vehicle.
Right. So that is our client there.
Yeah, he's in a bright red T-shirt. He's almost kind of like hanging out the window.
With 10 kilos of cocaine in his
Well, yeah,
car.
he's definitely not trying to conceal himself.
And then
the police descend on him.
They've obviously been tipped off in relation to the transaction.
After months of surveillance, undercover police suddenly swoop in, recover the cocaine and arrested Matt's client and the 2 men.
Bags taken, obviously opened.
So that is the bag containing the drugs. This is a serious problem, yeah. It's such a large amount of drugs. What do they say the value of the cocaine is?
Be about 400,000, wouldn't it?
Street value, it could be significantly more, I think. It could be about £1 million worth. He could be facing a life-changing custodial sentence.
I've got solicitors breathing down my neck, breathing down my neck. It's difficult to let people down. Certainly, I'll end up mad if I'm not already, which I am.
This train has aimed coaches.
I just need to work out this conference.
Today, Matt Radstone's having his first meeting with a taxi driver who faces 15 years in prison for conspiring with 2 other men to smuggle £1 million worth of cocaine.
What I always say to my clients is that you have to be able to speak to me openly and honestly. Talk to me on the level, tell me what's going on. And so building a relationship of trust between yourself and your client is extremely important.
How you doing?
Hello. How are you?
Good to see you. You well?
Yes, thank you.
Good. Hi, Catherine. So, my name's Matt Radstone, and I'm your barrister.
If you do that, it gives you the best opportunity of a successful outcome.
Solicitor Catherine O'Rourke is helping Matt prepare for the trial, which begins in 2 weeks. Matt's client claims he didn't know his co-defendants and thought they were putting money, not drugs, into the back of his taxi.
Give me step by step.
Right. They was waiting for me when I pulled in.
Understand.
So I've drove in and see them 2 standing on the corner. Yep. As I pulled in, my boots opened more or less straight away.
Yeah.
As soon as I parked up, he must have walked straight up behind and opened my boot, put the bag in the boot shut, and I thought, well...
Did you get out?
No.
Is that usual for you not to get out?
Well, no, it's stay up, I was in a rush.
Before he could drive away, undercover police pounced.
When I was pulling out the car park, he shouted out, slow down, so I'm going to follow you. That's when the penny dropped, basically. Yeah, pulled two and two together, and they've come out with 5, I don't know how.
Okay. Well, the reason they've come out with 5 is because you've got 10 kilos of cocaine in the back. You've got 10 kilos of cocaine in the back of the car, which is a problem. Okay. What you've just told me is essentially that you were acting completely innocently. You're a taxi driver, and that you were doing a job that day, and you had no idea that what was going to be ending up in the back of your car was drugs. All right. This is a jury trial. What that means is that 12 people from the local community are going to be the people who try you, who decide whether you're guilty or you're not guilty. Key is to remain calm at all times.
If what he's telling me is not credible, he's wasting his time. And the consequences of wasting his time is that he'll be found guilty if in reality he has no defence. It is your life that is on the line. It's your liberty, it's your freedom.
The police have found a drugs telephone number which is offering to sell drugs.
I'm going to discuss this with Paul, and then I'll get back to you.
There's some things about it that are raising alarm bells with me.
Yeah.
For more than 400 years, the area known as Temple in central London has been home to legal offices called chambers. Here, leading defence barristers work alongside solicitors on multiple criminal cases at a time. And it doesn't help when there's a backlog of almost 60,000.
And it's like an emergency. Like, I need this answer.
Thank you for coming back at short notice. We don't just turn up at 10 o'clock and sit and leave at 4. We start our preparation months in advance of a case. We've got a number of months before we get to trial. We've got three and a bit months, okay? When the trial is running, we're at court well before the case starts, and we're preparing well into any given night of that week, on the weekends, and so on and so forth. Darling, ask Grandad to take it out for you and put it in the lemonade, okay?
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye. Bye. We live, eat, breathe, and sleep this job. We sacrifice and commit to defending people charged with really serious crimes, and we do it uncompromisingly. There is really only one thing that's important when you're defending, and that is making sure that you do your absolute best to defend your client.
How many barristers does it take to find a flipping printer?
Go back and check.
No pages from this document were selected to be printed. What does that mean?
That's okay.
21, I think I've cracked it, Leon. This is 28.
She's cracked it.
For Leon Nathan Lynch,
I'm gonna tell her it didn't work.
being at the bar, the term used for working as a barrister, can seem a world away from where he grew up.
I feel like I'm between two worlds sometimes. On one hand, I've got my friends who grew up in and around East London, and then opposite end, I've got my friends at the bar. Yo!
Fashionably late, as always.
Long time, counsel, how are you?
I'm very good, how are you?
I'm well.
A fellow barrister and East Londoner, Kate Rixtina, is someone Leon often seeks advice from on serious criminal cases.
The work that Kate and I do is intense.
8-6.
And sometimes you're going to talk about some of the things that you face at work. This is the place.
Okay.
Leon has asked for Kate's input in his carjacking case. The trial has just begun. His client and another man are accused of getting into a Mercedes that stopped at traffic lights, robbing the driver at knife point and stealing his car. But Leon's client claims the attack was staged. He says the driver asked them to fake the robbery and let them steal the car so he could claim the insurance money.
It's a deal that went wrong, and I've become a robber from doing someone a favour. And now I'm the bad guy, with my life on the line.
And now his claims of innocence might be given a major boost. After researching the car involved in the incident, Leon wants to test the same model because he believes its door-locking system could undermine the prosecution's case.
Mercedes has a particular locking mechanism. And when the car stops, you can't open the door from the outside. It can only be opened from inside the car. How can it be that these individuals ran up to his car when it was parked at a traffic light and entered in the back of the car?
I pray to God this car doesn't open.
Okay, here goes nothing. I'm pulling it quite vigorously as well, you know. Oh, it opened.
Yeah. No, it opened because I opened it. So he's right.
Yeah.
He's right. But just say, let's say for example, if the rest of the complainant's evidence makes sense.
Okay.
But there's 2 car seats in the back of the car. So the angles in which child car seats, so the angles in which they would have been maneuvering around with the knives, according to the complainant. Again, that can't be right.
So we're moving past the point that the car wouldn't have opened. So
Sure.
you've opened the car.
I've opened the car.
So what, this way around?
Yep. And over like this, and holds him here like this.
Okay.
Yo, don't squeeze the suit though. Jeez.
Hey, we're reenacting. It's more important.
No.
Okay, so hold
Not
there.
my French suit, you don't. Right, yeah. And the knife is in that hand.
Okay.
Right. So the knife is being held across him like this.
You realise this makes there's a car seat in the way.
I'm just telling you what the complainant said. I know it makes no sense, but I'm just saying that this is...
Yeah, this is hard.
Because the angles are really difficult.
Yeah.
Really difficult.
So if he comes in through this side, that's your client.
Yeah.
Even then, like,
But
to
he's-
get to you.
Yeah.
And to get, if I then have this hand here, like, this is ridiculous. Question though.
Go on.
If your whole purpose of getting into the car is to rob the driver,
Yeah.
why on earth would you be going through the back seat, through the back of the car? Well, both of them must have been let in, all right?
Yeah.
That's fact. They must have been let into the car.
So the pupillage fair is an opportunity for future barristers to grow their professional networks.
To become a defence barrister requires a degree, a year studying for the bar, and an intense training period known as the pupillage, a process that can see hopefuls rack up tens of thousands of pounds in debt.
These relationships will be invaluable to you throughout both the pupillage but also at the bar.
And for those that make it, there's a daunting task of going into court to represent clients in front of a judge and jury.
When I walked into court for that first time, I was petrified. I spent the whole weekend preparing for it. I think I said 3 words, like, "Thank you very much, sir," and my legs were like jelly. I will never, ever forget those moments because it's what you've been working towards for all those years.
Oh, my first day, I loved it. I was well up for it. I mean, it was like this, and then there were moments where it just went back down like that, like the bad days. But yeah, we're newly qualified. I was so stoked.
It feels like an arena. You have your judge who sits there like a Roman emperor, surveying the people before him. And you have your jury standing there as well, and you're battling with people. You're battling, you're arguing, you're presenting evidence. Because if you're in a Crown Court representing someone, the stakes are high.
Do you ever remember making a big mistake?
Me make mistakes? Never happened. Call my lawyer. Never happened.
One of the newest recruits to the bar is Lady Jeannie Vaskovits, who recently completed her pupillage.
I would ordinarily also make lunch to take along because you can't rely on the canteens in whatever random court you're going to.
She's now on the front line of criminal defence.
I've got so much work on, 7 trials. So you always have this expectation of just going over and above every single day. So you're working 6 days a week, and then you've got Sunday to like wash and iron your clothes, maybe eat, maybe see your boyfriend who happens to live in your house but you haven't really seen.
You've got a busy day?
I've got a busy day, I'm getting stressed. And it's impossible. It really is. I'm going. See you later.
See you later.
Junior barristers, like Lady Jeannie, work on shorter cases that can last just 1 day or even less. It means she often doesn't meet defendants or learn about the crimes they've been accused of until they're about to appear in court.
Jesus, okay, so today I've got 3 hearings on, so I'm a little bit anxious today. It's gonna be chaotic. It's either gonna all work out, it's gonna be brilliant, or it's gonna be me crying by 3 p.m. But we'll see. We never know. The purpose of today's hearing is for you to enter a plea of guilty or not guilty, okay? So you're charged with an affray, so it just means that you used or threatened unlawful violence, and your conduct would have caused somebody to fear for their safety.
The evidence against Lady Jeannie's client seems overwhelming. CCTV shows him attacking another teenager who had threatened a girl.
One of the boys obviously hit a girl. I don't accept that for no one, no matter who you are in it, so I just reacted from that.
You could argue self-defense. The reason why it fails in your case is that it's just, put bluntly, you just went over the top. You can see yourself in the video. You followed him, you taunted him, you said yourself, you called him a pussy. You said, if you're comfortable hitting the girl, are you gonna hit me as well? So it's way, way out of self-defense. So I would not advise you to try and run that at all. I think you accept the evidence against you is just overwhelming.
Yeah.
I think it would be in your best interest to enter a guilty plea today, yeah?
That's what I was thinking.
And just have it over and done with. Now, the benefit of entering a guilty plea is that when courts see that people recognize that they are wrong, they do get credit for that. So you may still be able to get a referral order. And a referral order, it's an undertaking between you and the youth offending team to make sure that you don't engage in this kind of behavior anymore.
Yeah.
Okay. In fairness, he never said he had a defense. He's like, this is why it all started, but it completely escalated and I put my hands up because this happened, I did this and I did this, and none of that was necessary. I've had clients before who like look at the CCTV and still are like, no, but I didn't actually do that. I'm like, but no, it's not true. Okay, okay. But no, he was grand. He was really sensible. So I have some sushi on the train while I read my case papers for the next hearing, which I still don't know what it is yet properly. And then I'll see. Probably have a clue by the time I arrive.
Not all cases are so cut and dry. Matt's drug conspiracy trial is underway, and as well as CCTV evidence, it involves hundreds of pages of defense and prosecution statements.
When you're in that case, you are completely and utterly consumed. We're talking about during a trial, getting up first thing in the morning, preparing for the day, coming home, preparing at night for the next day. That is a relentless period of time, doing hours and hours and hours worth of work because you're considering what the bigger picture is. So there's always strategy that you're trying to think about and to employ, but the amount of work that goes into it is absolutely vast and significant.
Matt's client has been charged with conspiracy to supply £1 million worth of cocaine, alongside his 2 co-defendants who are accused of placing the drugs in the back of his taxi. But Matt's client says he didn't know the men and thought the parcel they put in his taxi contained cash.
It was a parcel. It could have been any driver allocated the job to, and would have gone and done it and been in the same situation as I am. Imagine getting up, going to work one day and then ending up in a police station and doing nothing wrong. Absolutely terrified of going to prison. Don't even want to think about it. Just can't even imagine being in that situation. I just don't think I could cope.
Tomorrow, he's expected to give evidence. The prosecution will leave no stone unturned to undermine his defense. Ahmad and solicitor Catherine want to check every detail of his account.
In terms of the job, how much did you quoted?
£100.
And when were you due to receive that?
Well, drop off. That's what I mean. You don't get paid until you drop the parcel off.
All right, now, obviously you're charged alongside co-defendants. Now, my understanding is you don't know any of those co-defendants, is that right? Never met them ever before. We're not going to find out there's ever been any communication, am I?
No, it was on the 29th that he phoned me in the evening.
Yeah.
Missed the call.
Right, but it wasn't anything that call that evening made you think there was anything untoward going on at all?
No. The next morning the phone's rang. He said, oh, how long before you can get to Chesington? I said, about an hour. He said, oh, can you FaceTime me? That was a bit strange.
Okay.
It's not good.
No. Well, I can't remember if he asked me to FaceTime him then, or when we was in the car. But perhaps he wants to see what I look like, so he don't give to the wrong person. Whatever I'm picking up. Because he hasn't gone through the office.
It's gone direct to you.
Yeah.
Right.
And that is really, really important information. If that had come out and I didn't know about it, it's destructive.
Yeah.
The fact that multiple FaceTime calls were made to the taxi driver from the drug dealers poses big problems for his defence.
Is that concerning? FaceTime calls?
It's a bit odd. I mean, you wouldn't FaceTime your taxi driver.
No, I don't think so.
You know, FaceTiming a taxi driver 10, 11 times is, well, it's potentially more than that. 6, 7, there are 8 that go through. I mean, it's still out of the ordinary.
It's such a large amount of drugs that your instincts would be, well, he must know or have an idea of what's going on, because the people who were doing the delivery, they'd have to be trusting somebody. If we can build a picture that this was literally wrong place at the wrong time, you know, it alters the strength of things.
There are always things that come out in criminal trials that the most experienced of practitioners themselves will never have seen, because we're dealing with people and no case is the same. It is going to be hard to explain to a jury how they can conclude anything other than he must have known. But at the end of the day, he is an innocent man in the same way as we all are innocent until proven guilty.
It's another hectic day for Lady Jeannie.
I finished in Basingstoke. I'm on my way to Westminster Magistrates Court.
She's en route to defend a man who's accused of defrauding his bank to the tune of £70,000. And she's waiting to be served or provided with the court papers, documents that outline the prosecution's evidence against her client.
I don't have any papers. What's supposed to happen is that the papers are served like at least the day before the hearing, so that defense counsel and solicitors can look at them, read through them, take a view and advise the client. Where I'm like, well, are we going to adjourn the hearing? Can you just let us know in advance what's going to happen? Because now you've got my client who's already in court. I'm running a bit late. He's already in court waiting around. And I'm going to arrive and maybe have papers, maybe not have papers, maybe wait another hour or two before we get papers. Inevitably, as soon as the court knows that I have the papers, they'll be asking me every 5 minutes whether I'm ready. Let's go.
Just half an hour before she's due in court, she finally gets the information she needs.
I got it by email, so let me speed read before the hearing. Barristers in general, I think, appreciate the tube Wi-Fi because it means that when you're served with papers, you can actually read them. It wasn't 200 pages as I was anticipating, it was just a summary, so it's okay. Because I'm going to take the client through things specifically, but I have enough of an overview to be able to advise him. You always have to advise on the law, the evidence, the strengths and the weaknesses, possible defenses, sentence allocation, and matters for today. Yeah, it's fine, it'll be fine. It'll be all right.
pupillage was 19 months. So I had 19 months to get used to this. Okay, let's go. We are late.
The case is going okay. Don't get me wrong, I've seen people in worse situations than he's in.
Leon's carjacking trial, in which is being held by fellow barrister Kate Vixina, is in its final week. His client claims he and his co-defendant faked the robbery as part of an insurance scam. In the coming days, each of them must decide whether to give evidence. If they do, the prosecution can cross-examine them about their account of what happened.
We're linked because our narrative is that we were on this together and it was an insurance job and there was no robbery.
Right. By the sounds of it, you have a very good case to say there's not going to be a conviction.
If he can give his evidence well, I think it's winnable.
But when the co-defendant decides to enter the witness box, his version of events completely contradicts the account given to Leon by his client.
The co-defendant had tried to do our client a favour, to totally paint him out of the picture. He wasn't involved, he wasn't even there. And you know, to a certain extent, that might be quite noble. The problem is, though, he was there. He was just saying, when I was there, it was an insurance job.
I always say there's much to discuss. Things didn't quite go as we expected.
As soon as my co-defendant went on there, everything just changed. From the first words, I could tell that it was going wrong. So I think he's really nervous.
Yeah, today was a curveball though. He's effectively said in his evidence that Mr. wasn't even there.
Leon's client now needs to decide if he wants to go ahead and give evidence himself. If he does and contradicts his co-defendant, his credibility could be at stake. But it's a decision that only he can make.
The decision to give evidence should always be for clients. And I can only advise on the benefits of giving evidence and maybe some of the problems they may face if they do give evidence. The problem is, if you don't give evidence, there's nothing for the jury to consider other than what the prosecution say.
If you feel like you do not want to give evidence, you don't give evidence. If you reckon that you need to give an account that is different, which is also a possibility, it's always going to be a matter for you.
It's such a stressful day, giving evidence.
Oh, definitely.
Matt's drugs case is drawing to a close, and his client, who could face 15 years in prison, has been cross-examined by the prosecution. Despite grilling him about his FaceTime calls with the men who put cocaine in his taxi, no evidence has emerged to show that drugs were ever mentioned during their communications.
How can they convict an innocent person? If it comes back guilty, I'll be finished. I'm not involved in any way at all, apart from him ringing the cab, and that's it. I believe in the system, and this will be the truth if the system works or not.
He was in tears for the first part of that, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. And I think it was, having to stand up and talk about it is stressful, but also what he's been through over the past year and a half with lockdown and effect on his business, and it's all obviously, culminated in this. It's
devastating. Speech tomorrow.
Yeah.
The jury will be reminded when we make our closing speech that he doesn't have to prove his innocence.
Yeah.
Prosecution have to prove the case.
Yeah.
Before the jury are asked to consider their verdict, both the prosecution and the defense will make their closing speeches, a crucial summary of their key evidence and arguments.
Obviously he's 55 years old. Daughter. He told the jury about his daughter. A lot turns on the closing speech because there are many strands to pull together. £1 million worth of cocaine placed in the back of his taxi. The pressure is significant. This really is a case where the closing speech can be potentially decisive. The prosecution bring this case, and what that means is that the prosecution have to prove it so that you are sure. If you were to metaphorically look at yourself in the mirror with your hand on your heart and think about the evidence in this case, can we be sure of my client's guilt? The fact that he has taken the walk into the witness box and looked at you and told you that he is not guilty. Ask yourselves whether or not you think the account that he gave you was lies. Bear in mind those very short phone calls for which there is no evidence about anything that was said, nor indeed is there any messages suggestive of his involvement in Class A drugs. Think about those things with care. And if you do so, the only conclusion that you will be able to reach in this case is one of not guilty.
After his co-defendant gave a different version of the alleged carjacking, Leon's client has chosen not to give evidence and avoid questions from the prosecution.
When he doesn't choose to give evidence, you can almost feel the eyes of the jury looking at your client, homing in on him, and the questions are running through their mind. Why would you not give evidence in a trial where these allegations are so serious against you? Obviously, the judge reminds them that it's their right as a defendant not to give evidence. But he also explains to them that they may draw a particular inference on that. And that inference is what's dangerous.
Having heard closing speeches, the jury are considering their verdict. If found guilty, Leon's client faces years in prison.
One of the first things I remember feeling when I went into prison for a legal visiting for the first time was, this doesn't feel safe. Just dirty, like falling apart. Like, my clients always talk about the cockroaches in prison.
I'm more worried about my daughter because I want to get to go home to my daughter. The last thing I've seen her is just in the cot. But with Leon, I feel like he's actually fighting like we're both on trial. Makes me feel like he's my friend.
Can't second guess how a jury come to their conclusions. I've seen juries walk into courtrooms smiling and laughing, then deliver a verdict, convict everyone. Equally, I've seen juries come in and be stone-faced and they acquit everyone. You can never guess. So hopefully, we've got enough.
After 4 hours of deliberation, the jury have made up their minds.
This is the part of the job that I hate. Verdicts that don't go your way.
They've found Leon's client guilty of robbery, possession of an offensive weapon, and going equipped for theft. He's sentenced to 5 years and 4 months in prison.
I'm absolutely gutted. But I'm more gutted for his partner and for him. Circo van taking Mr. back to Pentonville. Hitting the glass, letting us know that he can see us. To go from freedom to being in prison is, yeah.
Nah. But all you could hear was the thump, 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 thump of his hand.
The jury in Matt's taxi driver case had been considering their verdict for more than a day.
There is nothing, no matter how many times you've done a case, that prepares you or makes you feel any better about the time you spend waiting for a jury. You're on tenterhooks. You don't hear from them, you never find out about their conversations. That is sacrosanct, it's over to them, and you just simply have to wait. And that is very difficult to deal with.
When they finally reach a decision, it's unanimous. Facing 15 years behind bars, they found Matt's client not guilty.
When they come back with 12 not guilties, like, it was just such a... And I just collapsed. And then he said, oh, you can go. I can't even explain what was going through my head and through my body. I haven't got away with nothing, because I wasn't guilty in the first place.
His two co-defendants who placed the cocaine in his car and who were represented by a different defense team have been found guilty and sent to prison for 8 and 12 years respectively.
Beyond my expectations. I mean, it was a fantastic result. When the jury went out, I really thought it was going to be a close-run thing. So when the verdict came out, it was fantastic. The client broke down into tears. You know, it was just huge relief all round because he was looking at a life-changing sentence.
I felt it could go either way, but I was always confident of the truth. Whatever the prosecution threw at me, I was able to answer straight away because I didn't have to think about it, because I was telling the truth.
When I saw the police with your guns, I've panicked.
Driver, slowly open the door!
One man's future hangs in the balance.
If you get over 12 months custodial sentence, then you're subject to deportation.
And a brutal stabbing
There it is, it happens, I see it. Look, right hand, right round.
tests the defenders to the limit.
It's the single most damaging piece of evidence in the case for us. We have to fight tooth and nail to demonstrate to the jury that he was not guilty of murder.
So what happened?
The deceased was fatally stabbed and our client is charged with murder.
Okay.
He's boxed in by the cars. That's the opportunity to stab him as he passes him, isn't it?
Yeah.
If we can't challenge the evidence, he's going to prison for a very, very long time.
Inside the world of barristers, at the front line of justice.
Just put your hand out for us. Mate, you're under arrest for GBH.
Victim runs off to the right.
Off the CCTV.
Right hand on waist.
It could be us.
Because it would be off camera.
But these barristers aren't looking for who's guilty. Their mission is to defend.
There has to be some system where people's rights are protected.
We all should empathise with people who are victims of crime, but that doesn't mean that people who are accused of crimes shouldn't have a fair trial.
Don't shoot, just don't shoot.
There has to be a balance, and we fight fearlessly for our clients.
It's just a robe and it's just a wig, but it's almost as though it provides some form of protection. You walk into court and you feel, okay, I'm ready for battle now.
The only conclusion that you will be able to reach in this case is one of not guilty.
Thousands of criminal cases, a justice system at breaking point, and some barristers on the edge.
Right now we are engulfed in a crisis of epic proportions.
Whatever they've been accused of, I might be the only person that's actually on their side. And maybe it's the ultimate underdog fight.
We all have one thing in common. We all want to pursue and be a part of the pursuit of justice.
At 9 p.m. on the 19th of January 2021, two groups of teenagers confronted each other near Tottenham in North London. One group pursued the other with knives, stabbing two of them. One of the victims escaped with injuries, but the other collapsed and died. The first of 27 young people who would lose their lives to knife crime in the capital that year. Defence barristers Laurie Ann Power and Paul Mendel, a senior barrister known as the King's Counsel, are representing one of the attackers. They're being assisted by solicitor Emma Tingling.
This camera is the one that captures them.
This camera? I thought it was this camera.
No, this is the motion sensor cameras. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Their 17-year-old client, who's being held in custody, is charged with murder as well as wounding the first victim. His trial begins in 6 weeks and will take place in Crown Court, where only serious cases are heard. If found guilty, he faces life in prison.
Should we go to the CCTV?
Have you got it?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's back before then, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's 3.
It's 3? Yeah. Definitely, isn't it? Yeah.
Today, they're visiting the crime scene and analysing CCTV footage, which the prosecution claim points the finger at their defendant. He's known as D3, and like all defence barristers, they refer to us when talking about their client.
And this is us, D3.
It soon becomes clear it wasn't D3, but one of his friends who chased and stabbed the first victim, who survived.
There it is, it happens, I see it, look. There. See it?
Yeah.
There.
Yeah.
Right hand, right round it, that's it. He turns.
But D3 can be seen pursuing the second victim, who died from his wounds.
What's problematic is that we're closest behind the victim.
He runs off to the right, so fairly close.
And if we have a knife, we're in the position to be most likely to have inflicted that fatal stab wound. And that's why the timings are really important. We have to be meticulous down to the last fraction of a second.
So off the CCTV, we come into view, 49:42. He runs off to the right, victim. We start to run 49:53. We're running off right hand on waist, 49:54. We disappear off screen, 49:55, because it would be off camera.
It could be us.
We followed very closely.
We're very closely behind him.
The fact is, the prosecution case is strong, and it's this motion, isn't it?
Yeah. It's pulling up your hand to get it out.
And it's identical to the others as they chase off.
It's identical.
The actions of their client pose a big problem for his defence. But just seconds after he follows the victim out of frame, the movement of his friends could suggest a different version of events.
We are closest behind him, initially as we run off. His friends then run off in the direction of where the victim was. And so it could have been either one of them. At that point, that's where they would have caught him. And because this is so narrow, if he's having to pass them, he's boxed in by the cars, that's the opportunity to stab him as he passes them, isn't it?
Yes.
The jury have to be sure that he inflicted that fatal stab wound. The footage shows us that there are 3 candidates. Without having the footage that covers it, it still means there are 3 candidates.
Laurie Ann and Paul are just 2 of many defence barristers who work out of offices called chambers in London's legal district.
We'd sent them the update statement and review the case, yeah. I'll do that now, yeah. Cool, thanks, Harry.
Their job, to give specialist advice and fight in court for clients whose freedom is on the line.
We're going to have to think about whether or not it can be proved that he had the intention to kill.
The judge wants to attach a requirement to a suspended sentence at the Old Bailey today.
Nobody wants to be a defendant. Nobody wants to be in that position where they need to defend themselves. So if we're going to put people in that position, we better make sure that they are well represented by people who understand the law and know how to use their skill and ability to defend that person.
I just foresee that there may be some tensions with what is being said and what are other people saying.
It is not as straightforward as saying you're representing people that are guilty. It's just not the reality of the situation. We meet our clients and we present their case on their behalf, but at the end of the day, final decisions are not made by us, they're made by juries in the courtroom.
So we've been through the CCTV, we've been through it.
The verdict in a court case isn't always the end of the story. If there are reasonable grounds, anyone found guilty in Crown Court has the right to try and overturn the decision at the Court of Appeal. Today, barrister Leon Nathan Lynch and solicitor Emma Lewis are en route to meet a man for whom that right could be a lifeline. On the afternoon on the 14th of March 2020, a delivery driver went to collect an order from a fast food restaurant in Ashford, Kent. Whilst there, two men he knew asked him for a lift to Canterbury, 30 miles away. But shortly after dropping them off, he was stopped by armed police.
Driver, slowly open the door!
The men he'd driven were on the run for stabbing a man to death.
Right, lift your top up for me, mate. Lift your top fully up, turn around 360 for me.
When confronted at
Now
gunpoint,
go down onto your knees.
he lied and claimed he hadn't given the men a lift.
What's your name, bud?
The police eventually accepted he wasn't involved in the murder, but because he'd transported them away from the crime scene and lied when he was stopped, he was tried and found guilty of perverting the course of justice. The delivery driver, who's studying at university, is currently on bail whilst he waits to hear his sentence. If he's sent to prison for more than 12 months, he's likely to be deported back to Sierra Leone, from where his family escaped a brutal civil war when he was a teenager. He wants Leon and Emma to explore the possibility of overturning his conviction.
Can you tell us a bit about your family background?
The upbringing was rough. I was born during the wartime in my country because it was an 11-year civil war. We were scared for our lives because they were threatening our families. They were all going to come and kill you and things like this. He has to run away and we end up in England.
Okay, and what age did you move to the UK?
I moved here when I was 17.
Obviously you've done very, very well being here. You studied here and you had no previous convictions prior to this.
No.
Driver, look at me! Keep coming! Keep coming!
Your car is pulled over and you're swarmed by armed officers.
Yes.
And they're shouting at you and they're shouting directions at you, aren't they?
Yeah.
And what you said is because that was the first time in this country since being in Sierra Leone that you have had guns pointed at your head or your back, but that you have experienced that in the past.
It's like, I think it's a trauma because with the war and everything, you get captured by the rebels and they'll inflict pain on you. It was a scary moment for me, again, when I saw the police with their guns and everything. Like, I switched off. I think I told them I've panicked. Like, I don't know what's happening. So I lied to them. It wasn't the right thing to do. But at that time when I was stopped, I was not thinking. Even though they were asking me the question, I wasn't thinking. Like,
if you go to prison, because even with your right to remain in the United Kingdom, that could have an impact on your immigration status. Currently, if you get over 12 months custodial sentence, then you're subject to deportation.
it's really stressful because, like, if I go back, my family, my mom and dad, everyone is here. I'm going to be there on my own. That will knock me right down because I will not even know where to start.
My client told me that on that day, he innocently transported them from A to B. And the reasons he lied to the police was not to hinder their investigation, but effectively because he panicked. So we're going to see if we can find some grounds to appeal that conviction. Because if the Court of Appeal agree, the implications are huge, We're talking about him not going to prison for several years potentially. We're talking about him being able to continue living his life in the UK uninterrupted.
That's where we've just come from, down there, isn't it? Yeah. So you can actually follow the trail. Brick wall, lamppost.
Barrister Laurie Ann Power and King's Counsel Paul Mendel are preparing to defend a 17-year-old facing life for the murder of another teenager. His trial begins at Crown Court in 2 weeks, until which he's being kept in custody.
Oh, is it there?
No,
it's there.
Exactly, it's over here.
It's here.
Yeah.
So far, they've established that there's no evidence that he stabbed the victim after chasing him.
I don't think that's us. Okay. I really don't think that's us.
Right.
We have a gift and a curse. We're seen to put our hand to our waist and chase off behind him. That's the bad part. The advantage we have in the CCTV not covering the fatal stabbing is that the prosecution are unable to say that we were the person who inflicted that fatal stab wound.
But that advantage may have been lost because the prosecution are applying a legal principle called joint enterprise.
There.
Regardless of what the CCTV does or doesn't show, this principle means their client and his friends only had to assist with the crime and share the aim of carrying it out to be found guilty of murder, even if they didn't land the fatal blow.
There are two parts to joint enterprise. You have a principal party. The principal role is quite straightforward. You stabbed somebody, you inflicted the fatal injury, you had the knife. The secondary role is if you, as a defendant, do something to assist or encourage the principal to do what they did. But really important, if at the time you did that, you shared their intention to cause really serious harm or death, that makes you guilty of murder.
And to help argue their case, the prosecution have obtained a damning new piece of evidence. A Snapchat video, retrieved from the phone of Laurie Ann and Paul's client, showing his friends shortly before they went out and encountered the group that was attacked.
Hi, Emma.
Hi, Laurie Ann, how are you?
I'm good, you?
Not so good, having seen this Snapchat video. You've seen that?
Yeah, I have seen it. I watched it a bit earlier on. It's very bad for us.
That video is taken directly before they leave the address. I think it's timed about 20 minutes before.
It's 20 minutes before, exactly.
No. Head away.
It's the single most damaging piece of evidence in the case for us, save for the footage at Willow Walk that shows him chasing after the deceased. I'll discuss it with Paul anyway.
With the trial looming, Laurie Ann and Paul need to urgently assess what the video means for their client's defence, and what arguments they can use to counter the prosecution's claim that he must have known about and supported a plan to murder.
It's bonanza for them. It's us dressed as we are later that night, brandishing knives.
Yeah.
It's everything they need to show that we all had knives or knew who had knives.
Exactly. It's admissible because of for a number of reasons. The possession of the knives, proximity in time to the fatal incident.
They're home and dry. Both sides are going out for a confrontation because there's an issue between these two groups.
And when they leave the house, they know they're going out with the potential of meeting a confrontation.
Yeah.
There's a lot to be said for us. Say, look, he is your just standard 16-year-old kid who has an unhealthy interest in knives. It will concern you, but it also actually establishes that that's where it ends.
Yeah.
He's not someone who's ever been found with a knife out in an aggressive manner. He's not someone who uses knives.
No. Do we have any records of stops and searches
Yeah.
for him? That would never come up, would it? But he would have been stopped and searched.
Many, many times. In Tottenham.
Yeah.
Walking home from school.
Yeah.
He would have been stopped and searched many times.
Yeah, we can say that. That's a comment we can make.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay, so I think we're agreed on our tactic. There can be no doubt that the legal principle of joint enterprise has been most frequently used in respect of offences involving large groups of young, working class, often black males from a particular demographic. It means that you can be guilty of murder without taking your hands out of your pocket. Does it disproportionately affect people from certain communities? Undoubtedly it does. Do I think it's a necessary legal principle? I think it is, because a lot of the time it takes more than one man to kill someone. My client's defence is that he neither encouraged or assisted the principal to stab, and he certainly didn't share the mental element to kill or to cause really serious harm.
Has anything happened since the allegation that's caused any concern?
Most criminal defence barristers are self-employed, and because much of their work is government-funded, they get paid less than commercial or corporate lawyers.
All right, so we'll head to court and I will see you in court shortly. All right? Thank you.
The public view of defence barristers is probably fat cat lawyers who earn significant amounts of money, who spend their summers on boats, and it's a view that is misunderstood.
Right, so there is an 8:39 train that gets us London Bridge to Plumstead.
The people that do criminal work are hard-working people and are not fat cats by any stretch of the imagination.
Thanks in part to the pandemic, the criminal justice system currently faces a huge backlog, especially in magistrates' court, where 300,000 cases are waiting to be heard. Unlike Crown courts, magistrates' courts deal with less serious offences. But for the defendants who appear in them, the stakes can be just as high. Today, Barrister Tom Flavin is meeting a client whose magistrate's court appearance is just a few days away. A building site manager who was caught driving over the speed limit on a motorway, and with 9 points already on his licence, he faces a ban which could have terrible consequences.
All right, Graham, well, we can apply to keep your licence if we can show to the court that there is exceptional hardship caused to you by you losing your licence. Do you rely on your car or vehicles to get to work?
Yeah, I've got a van, so I rely on the van to get to work.
So if you were to lose your licence and then not able to drive...
It could close the business.
What would be your financial situation if...
I've still got quite a high mortgage, which I'm trying my best to pay off.
Why is it important? So
I leave my wife and my children, you know, in a good situation where they haven't got any debts. Because at the moment I've got a condition called smouldering myeloma. I was initially diagnosed with possibly only 3 years to live.
My goodness. Yeah. So as we sit here now, do you know exactly how long you've got?
No.
Oh, Graham, I'm sorry to hear that. So tough.
Yeah.
So in terms of then losing your licence, what impact is that going to have on, have you got hospital appointments, have you got
I've got regular appointments at the Marsden. It would be very awkward. Yeah, very awkward.
Yeah, okay. So really here, I think you've got two compelling grounds for exceptional hardship. One being The fact you don't know how long you've got to go and to lose your licence now could have an impact on your health and getting your treatment.
Yep.
But also will leave you and your loved ones in a more difficult financial position.
Yeah, absolutely.
If and when the worst happens. I think for those two reasons here we can say this guy needs his licence.
In Kent, the delivery driver who's been found guilty of lying to the police and perverting the course of justice for transporting two men on the run for murder is awaiting sentencing. If he goes to prison as expected, he's likely to be sent back to Sierra Leone after serving his time in jail.
I'm stressed, anxiety, scared. So many feelings running through. Sometimes I just sit at home or in a dark room all day. It's just too stressful. It is.
The stakes are so high. It's likely he's going to go to prison for more than 12 months. And it's likely that after those 12 months, he is somebody who will be deported back to Sierra Leone because of his status. His family have long moved on and live here. So for him to have to start afresh in a country he doesn't know, without family, without support, is going to be difficult for him.
In a bid to help him, Leon is seeking grounds for taking his case to the Court of Appeal, and he's asked fellow barrister Peter Egwai for his input.
Driver, slowly open the door!
Part of the delivery driver's conviction was based on him lying to police when they first stopped him. But after reviewing police body cam footage of the encounter, Leon believes he may have found fault with their methods because his client was questioned before being arrested and having his legal rights explained.
When my client is stopped and he says to them, "Am I under arrest?" They tell him, "No, you're being detained." The police should have thought, we're going to have to caution him. We can't ask him questions because the answers to those questions
could be used against him in a court of law.
But that's why we have the caution.
So the caution is you do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention, when questioned, something which you later rely on in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence. For a normal person, what does it mean?
You don't have to say anything. You can keep your mouth shut. You have a right to remain silent. And for somebody who isn't legally trained, or for someone who hasn't been in a situation like this before, he doesn't know he's got a right to remain silent.
He might not even know at this stage that he actually had a right to a solicitor.
Exactly.
In the town there, you dropped someone off from your car. There was two people in that car, then only one.
They haven't formally arrested him.
But he's arrested.
But he's not free to leave.
No. He's effectively been told that he has to help the police officers. He has to. And they say, all we have at this point is you. When really what they should have been saying to him is you have a right to remain silent. So they actually tell him the complete opposite. You have to help us. All we have is you.
There were two people that were in Canterbury in the car. You went into a car park and you come out of it just you.
So the judge failed to recognise this as an interview.
Because individual wasn't under arrest.
Yes.
Therefore, because he wasn't under arrest, he didn't need to be cautioned.
Correct.
Therefore, the police could ask him any questions and without any concern for the rights of the defendant in relation to the answers he might give to those questions.
Yeah.
That's potentially an arguable ground for the Court of Appeal. Your argument is that should never have been considered by the jury because of the nature in which it was acquired.
Currently, the plan is we are listed for trial on Monday.
Monday?
Yeah.
After weeks or months of intense pre-trial preparation, all serious criminal cases finally arrive in Crown Court, where defence barristers and their clients face the daunting prospect of arguing their case to a judge and jury.
Every barrister will tell you there is nothing that focuses the mind like the day of trial. It's so true.
It gives me a feeling of like, okay, put everything else aside, this is it. And you're focused on the law and the evidence The law and the evidence, the law and the evidence.
You are walking into a pressure cooker, guilty or not guilty. I've seen people collapse in the witness box. I've seen clients have strokes in the middle of cases. I've seen people have heart attacks because it is your life that is on the line. And you know that that door behind you leads into a prison cell.
For Lori-Anne, the high stakes of a courtroom battle are about to begin.
So I'll pack my bag. Gym shoes everywhere.
After 3 months spent preparing a defence, her murder trial starts today and is due to last 4 weeks.
If I'm doing a long trial, I've always got an overnight bag packed, just in case there's a particular issue arises and I can't get home, and I will be able to stay without having to run down to Boots for a spare toothbrush.
Her 17-year-old client, who's been held in custody, faces life in prison for killing another teenager. This will be the first time Lori-Anne has come face to face with the victim's family.
There's a degree of anxiety, stress. You have to ensure that you don't allow any form of emotional trigger. When you start to try and empathise with defendants or witnesses or victims, once you start to feel that kind of an emotional draw to them, it clouds your judgment. You've got to be dispassionate. You have to be. No one can sit in court and hear from the mother of a dead child weep internally, trying to be dignified and hold her tears back, but weeping nonetheless. No one can sit there and be unmoved by it. And we hear it in, day out. We hear those cries from the well of the court, from the deceased family. But you have to then stand up and you have to cross-examine. You have to then stand up and you have to challenge the evidence.
The trial's being held at the Old Bailey, London's most important criminal court, where only the most serious cases are heard. But Lori-Anne and Paul's chances of success are hanging in the balance. Along with 3 other co-defendants, who are represented by different defence teams, their clients charged with murder under the principle of joint enterprise. It means, even though there's no evidence he stabbed the victim, the jury can still find him guilty because he was there.
Only one person could have inflicted that stab wound, but potentially a number of people could be guilty of murder. Essentially, what the prosecution will say is that he assisted and encouraged, and when he did that, he shared that mental element of the offence, which was to cause really serious harm or to kill.
But just a few days into proceedings, there's a dramatic boost for Lori-Anne and Paul's defence. Whilst on remand in prison, one of the co-defendants made a phone call to a friend. Like all prison calls, it was recorded, and during it, he admits to using his knife to land the fatal blow. The recording, which has been submitted as evidence, is crucial because he suggests it was him and him alone who set out to commit murder.
The covert recordings are an insight into what actually happened.
Yes. The counter-argument is he was boasting, digging himself up, because he knew the cause was being recorded.
But even if he was boasting, number one, he's accepting that you stabbed someone and saying things like, I went too far, I took it too far. I was only trying to, this was all about me. I wanted to do this for me. It's direct evidence, it's not speculation, it's direct evidence of his intention.
This jury can convict us on the basis of joint enterprise, on the basis that we go out armed. We're plainly looking for this group, as they are for us. And we do confront them, and we do chase after him in a way which looks purposeful. And the jury can conclude that we have a knife.
I think the emphasis from here on in should be not whether or not we did have a knife, but the fact that if we did have a knife, we didn't use it.
Yeah. Yeah, we had every opportunity to do something and we didn't.
And we had the means to do it,
Yeah.
and we chose not to.
Yeah.
We chose not to.
Yeah. And that's so significant.
Today, Tom Flavin's heading to Wimbledon Magistrates Court in South London. He's representing his client who was caught speeding whilst already having 9 points on his licence and faces a driving ban. For Graham Williams, who has a terminal illness, a guilty verdict would ruin his business and prevent him securing his family's financial future before he dies.
I don't quite know how we'd get through it. It'd impact everything. So losing the van would be a disaster.
Unlike a Crown Court, in which a jury come to a verdict and a judge passes sentence, Graham's fate will be decided by a panel of 3 magistrates, trained but unpaid members of the local community, known as Justices of the Peace.
Yeah. Let's give it our best shot when we get in there.
Yeah.
With 5 other cases also being heard here today, Tom has just 1 hour to argue that his client's exceptional circumstances should spare him from losing his license. Shortly after he concludes, a decision is made. The court decides not to impose a driving ban.
Thanks ever so much.
No, you're really, really welcome. You've still got 9 points on your licence. So if you were to speed on the way home today, you're back to 12 again. And we can't run this argument again. So this is it now.
All right, lovely. Thanks ever so much. Really appreciate it.
Cheers, mate.
Slowly open the door!
Leon's delivery driver client was found guilty of perverting the course of justice for driving 2 murderers away from a crime scene and lying to police. He has now been sentenced and sent to prison.
Now come round the back of my car here. You come in.
But Leon believes police didn't follow correct procedures, and today, his case is being heard at the Court of Appeal.
We all know from the police programs that they say the caution when you're stopped. You have a right to da-da-da-da-da and da-da-da-da-da-da. He got none of that. All barristers have an obligation when you're running a case, if you feel there are arguable grounds of appeal, to advise your client and to pursue those arguable grounds before the Court of Appeal. And that's why you work the long hours, right? Because if you don't put the work in, then it's the client who's going to suffer effectively. And I can't live with that. Yeah, not on my conscience.
Leon's hearing will take place at the Royal Courts of Justice in front of 3 of the country's most senior judges. It is one of the most daunting arenas for any barrister and a new experience for Leon.
This is the first time I've been before the Court of Appeal. I've dealt with judges over a number of years now, but I'm certain that the level of judges I'm about to appear in front of today is nothing like what I've ever experienced before.
But it's not just Leon with a challenge on his hands. His client is facing a major dilemma. Instead of the expected 12 months, he was only sentenced to 4 months in prison and is now unlikely to be deported when he's released. Proceeding with the appeal, which if successful, could involve a complete retrial, may no longer be his best option. Before going ahead, Leon needs to establish what his client wants to do.
So the first hurdle we have to overcome this morning is just to confirm his instructions. He was sentenced not too long ago. After being sentenced, we tried to get in contact with him just to confirm he wanted to proceed with his appeal. And for a number of reasons with the prison, he hasn't been able to communicate his wishes to the solicitor. So this morning I'm trying to confirm what he wants to do. because I can't just advance an appeal without his instructions and confirming his instructions.
With 2 weeks remaining, Lori-Ann and Paul's Old Bailey murder trial has reached a critical stage. Tomorrow, Lori-Ann will cross-examine the co-defendant who's admitted stabbing the victim. His admission has undermined the case against the client known as D3, being the person who landed the fatal blow. But the prosecution's use of joint enterprise means he could still face life in prison for murder if the jury conclude he helped with a plan to kill.
Should we ask him, did D3 do anything at all to assist you in what you did? Was there anything said or done by D3 that led you to do what you did? Incredibly dangerous question. I'd have to know the answer to that first.
My instinct is no.
Oh, right.
Because we don't know what he's going to say. Under pressure, because if he feels as though he's being attacked, under pressure he could say anything.
But it's the events off camera.
Leading up.
After he's run off.
Yeah.
After we've run off.
Yeah.
And after the other two have run after us. Did we do or say anything to assist him in the stabbing? Now, we know he didn't. We know he didn't.
But why raise it as a question in the jury's mind?
To get the answer and to stop the prosecution digging around. Where was D3?
There are all sorts of different things that we have to consider. He is the only person that will say where we were when the fatal stabbing took place, and that proximity to what happened is important for joint enterprise. The further you are from the scene of the fatal stabbing, the greater the argument is that actually you didn't join up to this enterprise at this stage. If one person goes off on a complete frolic of their own and pulls out a knife and stabs it, to everyone else's shock, that person has departed from what was agreed. And that's really important. That's why this is a really important witness for us, probably the most important witness in the case.
In the Court of Appeal, in which cameras are allowed to film proceedings, it's a big moment for Leon. The judges, led by Lady Justice McCure, are ready to hear his appeal for his client, who was found guilty of perverting the course of justice.
Mr. Lynch, you'll have seen the single judge's indication to the full court if you're unsuccessful.
But there's been a last-minute change of plan. Leon's client is no longer facing deportation, and given that a successful appeal could mean a retrial, with a possibility that he's still found guilty, Leon has been informed by his client from prison that he no longer wants to go ahead.
My lady doesn't wish to proceed with the appeal. He is now being given an early release date of February.
What's your application to us today?
To withdraw my initial application on the basis of his instructions, my lady.
We grant that application. It's a realistic appraisal. Good sense has prevailed. Thank you very much for your attendance.
Very cool. I think it was the right decision.
I agree.
It's easy to say, take the risk, right? We spoke to him before this appeal, and he says, look, if I go and do this appeal and I lose, the risk is too great. And I feel for him. He was clearly torn, but when it came down to it, spending another day in prison that he didn't potentially have to do was enough to influence his decision. And he said, no, withdraw the appeal. He knows what day he's going to be released. It's earlier than we expected. And as far as he's concerned, he can draw a line under this.
In Lori-Ann and Paul's Old Bailey murder case, the client's co-defendant has finished being cross-examined.
Yeah.
Speech points.
You can do speech points.
And I will say pretty much that.
All that remains is for the defence and prosecution to make closing speeches, their last chance to appeal to the jury's hearts and minds.
That's the part, isn't it?
Yes, exactly.
That's the important part.
That's the important part.
For their client D3 to be found not guilty of murder, Paul has to convince the jury to separate him from D2, the person who actually landed the fatal blow.
Members of the jury, D3 is not guilty. First, and most obviously, D3 did not use his knife to injure, even though he had ample opportunity to do so. This is the most powerful evidence of all. You cannot spell out an intention to cause serious harm with a knife from a refusal to use the knife. It would not simply be illogical, it would be perverse. There is no evidence that D3 said or did anything to encourage D2 to stab. In his prison phone calls, when D2 may be assumed to be telling the truth, he never said that D3 played any part whatsoever in the stabbing. One knife, one stabber, and that person was D2, not D3, who intended that they be seriously hurt, not D3. D3 is not guilty, and those are the verdicts we ask you for return.
Lorianne and Paul have done all they can. The jury is sent out to reach a verdict. With 4 weeks of complex legal arguments to consider, it takes 3 days before they come to a decision and the court is reconvened.
Are you tense now?
I feel a bit anxious. I feel tense and anxious for our client. Yeah. Either way, whatever, if he's going home today or if he's going back to prison for a very, very long time, this process has been really traumatic for him.
Yeah.
The verdicts are unanimous. The teenager who admitted to stabbing the victim is convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison. But Lorianne and Paul's client is acquitted of murder and found guilty of the lesser charge of manslaughter. He's given a 10-year sentence.
Not guilty of murder is a result. Of that 10 years, he will have to serve half of that, 5 years minus the time he's already been in custody, so he's got 4 years and a few months to do.
Yes.
We are always mindful of the family of the deceased and the deceased in these circumstances. But for me, our client's case is a perfect example of why it is that the jury system is impeccable. They took their time and they produced, ultimately, at the end of it, what I believe to be absolutely the right verdicts. I see it as a win on many levels. I see it on a win because he has to take responsibility for his actions. I see it on a win because he was not guilty of murder and the jury agreed with us on that. And I see it as a win because he gets to come out and make something of himself and hopefully, we can only hope, have a better life.
Right, listen, mate, you're under arrest for GBH, okay?
A fight at a party puts the young man's freedom at stake.
I sort of went over and bit his ear.
The sentence we would be looking at would be in the region of 6 years.
And the defenders tackle a major drugs conspiracy that threatens to land their client in jail.
Everybody's friends. Oh, that's my friend. Friendship always ends at the court door.